You don't notice it at first, because nothing is supposed to be there. The platform is empty, too empty for a place that smelled like rust and electricity just minutes ago. The fluorescent lights above you hum with that familiar, irritating buzz, the kind you usually ignore. But now it feels louder, sharper, like it's trying to drown something out or warn you. You shift your weight. The concrete beneath your shoes is cold, unnaturally cold, seeping through the soles like the ground itself is breathing against you. There's a faint metallic taste in the air, like old coins pressed against your tongue. Your phone screen glows in your hand. No signal, of course. It's always no signal when it matters. Then you hear it, a faint sound. Tek. You freeze. You tilt your head slightly, listening harder. The station stretches into darkness on both ends, the rails vanishing into a tunnel that seems to swallow light itself. Nothing moves. Nothing breathes. You exhale. Just the tracks, you tell yourself. Metal cooling, expanding, science, logic, comforting lies. Then it comes again. Tek, tek, closer. This time it has rhythm. And that's the problem. Because random noises don't have rhythm. Your grip tightens around your phone. The plastic creaks slightly under your fingers. Your heartbeat begins to sink, uninvited, with that distant scraping cadence. Hey, Gady, tek, tek, tek. You shouldn't listen this closely, but you do. And the more you listen, the clearer it becomes. It's not just a sound, it's movement. Something is dragging itself, fast. You take a step back. The air shifts with you, colder now, pressing against your skin like damp cloth. Your ears strain, trying to map direction, but the sound doesn't behave. It echoes wrong. It folds in on itself. It shouldn't be that close already. You swallow. Your throat feels dry, like the air has been scraped clean of oxygen. Instinct, raw, primitive, starts clawing its way up your spine. Don't look. But of course, you do. That sound you just heard, that wasn't your imagination. That's how Teke Teke announces itself. And the scenario you just lived through, that's considered a mild encounter. Welcome, not to a story, but to a case file, a very inconvenient one. Because today, we're not just talking about a ghost, we're dissecting a pursuit, a phenomenon that turns empty train stations into hunting grounds and a simple sound into a death sentence. You can keep watching, but just so we're clear, the more you understand how it works, the less likely you are to survive it. People like to pretend every urban legend begins with a warning, a rule, a cursed sentence, a ritual gone wrong, something cinematic, something neat. Teke Teke doesn't give you that luxury. Its story begins the way most human tragedies do, with impact, noise, and a body the world no longer knows what to do with. In the oldest and most repeated versions of the legend, Teke Teke is said to be the restless remains of a young woman, sometimes a schoolgirl, sometimes just a woman, because folklore is rarely interested in giving victims the dignity of consistency, who fell onto train tracks and was severed in half by an oncoming train. No grand prophecy, no demonic contract, just steel, speed, and a few brutal seconds that rewrote a person into a phenomenon. And that matters. Because Teke Teke doesn't feel like an ancient spirit from a forgotten temple. It feels modern, industrial, urban. It belongs to platforms, crossing gates, concrete corridors, fluorescent light, the stink of grease and rainwater. The kind of places built to move people efficiently while quietly grinding them down. A haunting tailored for public infrastructure, which is honestly a very on-brand nightmare for modern life. Imagine the moment from inside it, not the gore. That part is cheap. Think instead about the sensory fracture of it. The violent snap between being a person and becoming an event. One instant, you have balance, weight, direction, a future that still belongs to you. The next, the world is sideways. Your hearing is blown open by metal and shrieking brakes. The air tastes like sparks. Your hands claw at concrete so cold it feels wet. Somewhere nearby, People are screaming, but the sound reaches you as if through water. Your body is no longer a home. It's a broken message, and the message doesn't end. That's the true horror at the center of Teke Teke. Not just mutilation, not just death, but interruption. A life cut so violently in half that the spirit keeps behaving as if the rest of it should still be there. The legs are gone. The motion remains. The destination is gone. The pursuit remains. Everything that should have stopped keeps going. That's why the legend sticks. A ghost with chains? Fine. A ghost in white? Classic. But a spirit that has lost half its body and still moves with purpose, that bypasses logic and punches straight through instinct. Your brain doesn't know where to file it. Human beings are extremely attached to the idea that anatomy should mean something. Teke Teke politely disagrees. Some versions say she drags herself with her elbows. Others say she runs on her hands with horrifying speed. Some describe a scraping rhythm against pavement. Others insist the Teke Teke sound comes from the repeated impact of bone, nails, or ruined limbs against the ground. Folklore, as usual, can't agree on the exact mechanics. Very helpful. But every version protects the same essential truth. You hear her before you understand her, and by the time you understand her, distance has already failed you. That repetition is important too. Urban legends survive because they adapt, and Teke Teke is almost aggressively adaptable. In one school, she becomes the ghost seen near the tracks behind the building. In another, she appears in restrooms, hallways, or under stairwells, because apparently adolescence wasn't uncomfortable enough already. In some tellings, she kills on sight. In others, she asks questions. In a few variants, her story overlaps with Kashima Reiko, another Japanese spirit tied to bodily destruction and fatal riddles. Different names, different details, same rotten core. The dead returning not as memory, but as unfinished motion. And that unfinished quality is what makes her so effective. A complete ghost can be mourned. An incomplete one lingers. You can almost feel how the legend was built, piece by piece, through the psychology of commuters, students, and anyone who has ever waited alone in a place designed for temporary presence. Train stations are liminal by nature. You're not home. You're not gone. You're suspended. And that's where Teke Teke thrives, in the thin strip between arrival and disappearance. You know the kind of place. The vending machine humming to itself. The weak reflection in the dark train window. The overhead announcement so distorted, it sounds half-human. The smell of wet concrete and old iron rising after midnight. Those spaces already feel like they belong to something else. Teke Teke simply gives that feeling a face, or rather, a moving absence where a body should be. And like most durable legends, the story carries a social bruise under the horror. There's anxiety here about urban isolation, about public spaces that stop feeling public the moment everyone else leaves, about how quickly modern systems turn intimate disaster into background noise. A death near the tracks becomes a rumor. The rumor becomes a warning. The warning becomes a creature. That's folklore doing what it does best, taking a real fear and giving it a shape you can hear coming, which, to be fair, is not much of a comfort. Because once a tragedy becomes a pattern, people start listening for it. And once people start listening, they begin hearing things. A scrape at the far end of the platform, a quick irregular tapping in an empty corridor, a sound too deliberate to be random, too wrong to be mechanical. That's how a location gets infected. Not by blood, by anticipation. And Teke Teke is almost pure anticipation. She is not the fear of death in the abstract. She is the fear of realizing, one sound too late, that something impossible is already moving toward you. So when people ask where Teke Teke came from, the simplest answer is this: from a body broken by steel, from a city that kept moving, from the human inability to accept that some endings are too abrupt to stay buried, and maybe from the specific kind of loneliness you only feel on a platform after the last train should have come and gone. That's the origin, not just of the ghost, of the chase. If you're still imagining Teke Teke as just a ghost missing its legs, you're underestimating the problem badly. Because what makes this entity effective isn't what it lacks, it's how efficiently it compensates. Your brain is wired to evaluate threats based on anatomy. Legs mean speed, arms mean reach, eyes mean awareness. You see something missing half its body, and instinctively, almost arrogantly, you downgrade the danger. That assumption would get you removed from the situation very quickly. Teke Teke's body, if we can still call it that, is less a form and more a functional system built around one purpose: forward motion. Picture it, not as a static image, but as a sequence. Hands hit the ground, hard. There's a sharp percussive tack, not quite flesh, not quite bone, something in between. Then a second impact, faster. Teke, teke, teke. The rhythm isn't random. It's mechanical in its consistency, like a metronome that learned how to hunt. Each strike propels the upper torso forward with disturbing efficiency. The shoulders absorb the shock. The spine, what's left of it, bends in a way that shouldn't produce movement, yet does. You don't need to see the lower half to understand it's gone. You feel the absence. There's no counterbalance, no natural gait, just a repeated violent negotiation with gravity that somehow results in speed. Real speed. The kind that collapses distance before your brain finishes processing the sound. And then there's the friction. Concrete scraping against something that used to be human. A dry, dragging undertone beneath the sharper impacts. Not loud, but textured, like sandpaper pulled across wet stone. If the surface is metal, like near the rails, the sound shifts. Higher, thinner, almost like a scream trying to become a whistle. Different surfaces, same approach. That's how you track it, which is also how it tracks you. Because sound in this case isn't just a byproduct, it's a signature. Some accounts insist the Teke Teke isn't just the result of movement, but something closer to a byproduct of existence. Like the entity itself is slightly out of sync with the environment, and every contact point creates a correction, a glitch resolving itself in real time. That would explain the inconsistency people report. Sometimes the rhythm is fast, sometimes it drags, sometimes it skips, like a corrupted audio file catching up to itself. But it never stops entirely. Not until, well, we'll get to that. Visually, witnesses rarely agree on details, which is exactly what you'd expect from something that doesn't want to be fully processed. But a few elements repeat often enough to be considered reliable. The torso is intact enough to suggest identity, but wrong enough to reject it. Long hair, usually dark, tends to obscure the face, not in a dramatic horror movie way. More like it simply hangs there, damp, heavy, moving slightly out of sync with the rest of the body, as if the air around it isn't following the same rules. The arms, this is important, are not passive. They're overworked. Every movement is driven through them, meaning they appear stronger, faster, more aggressive than they should be. Elbows slam, fingers claw. The hands don't just touch the ground. They attack it over and over again, extracting momentum like it owes them something. You don't watch those arms and think injured. You think adapted. And adaptation is always more dangerous than damage. As for the face, most accounts either avoid describing it or contradict each other, which usually means one thing: people didn't get a good look, or they did, and their brain refused to keep the file. But there are fragments: a mouth that doesn't align properly when it moves, eyes that don't blink at the right time, if they blink at all, an expression that isn't anger or pain or even awareness, just continuation. That's the best word for it. Teke Teke doesn't feel like it's chasing you in the emotional sense. There's no theatrical rage, no dramatic intent. It's closer to a process executing, a command that was issued during the moment of death and never terminated. Move forward, reach, close the distance, repeat. And here's where things become inconvenient. Because the more you analyze its anatomy, the more you realize it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need full vision. Sound compensates. It doesn't need balance. Momentum replaces it. It doesn't need endurance. There's no fatigue in something that isn't alive. Everything it lost in that initial incident, it replaced with something simpler, something more efficient, something that doesn't negotiate. You, on the other hand, are still bound by very human limitations. Your legs will tire, your lungs will burn, your brain will hesitate, just long enough to question what you're seeing. And hesitation in this context is not a personality trait, it's a countdown. By the time you fully accept what's moving toward you, you're no longer reacting, you're catching up to something that already solved the problem of distance. So when people reduce Teke Teke to a half-bodied ghost, what they're really doing is comforting themselves with incomplete data, because the truth is less poetic and far less forgiving. It's not missing half its body, it's optimized without it. And whatever part of you is still expecting fairness in that equation is going to be very disappointed. Let's be honest. Up to this point, you've been treating Teke Teke like a thing, a creature, a shape, something you could, in theory, understand. That's your third mistake, because Teke Teke isn't just anatomy, it's a process. And processes don't stop just because you're uncomfortable. At first, it's just a sound. You've already heard it. That faint, irregular tek, at the edge of perception. The kind of noise your brain tries to dismiss to conserve sanity, background clutter, environmental static. But here's the problem. Your brain is trained to filter out randomness, not patterns. And Teke Teke is nothing if not consistent. Phase 1. The dismissal. You hear it once. It's distant, barely there. A soft, dry contact against a hard surface. Your mind reaches for explanations. Old pipes, cooling metal, someone dropping something far away. You don't turn around. You don't need to, because nothing is supposed to be there. That assumption buys you exactly a few seconds. Phase 2. Pattern recognition. It happens again. Tek. Same spacing, same texture. Your body reacts before your thoughts do. A subtle tightening in your chest. Your shoulders stiffen. Your breathing shallows without permission. Because now your brain is doing something dangerous. It's connecting dots. Random noise becomes rhythm. Rhythm becomes intent. And intent means something is choosing to move toward you. Phase 3. Cognitive lag. Here's where most people fail. Not physically, mentally. You hesitate. Not because you're brave, but because you're trying to reconcile two incompatible ideas. There's nothing there, and something is definitely coming. That gap, that half second of disbelief, that's all it needs. Because while you're debating reality, it's already accelerating. Teke Teke faster now. Closer. Too close for how little time has passed. Phase 4. Directional collapse. You finally turn, or maybe you don't. Some people freeze, some people run without looking. Neither option is particularly effective, because the sound doesn't behave. It bounces, warps, slides along surfaces in ways that make spatial awareness unreliable. Walls throw it back at you. The ground amplifies it. Open space stretches it thin. You think it's behind you, then to your left, then everywhere. Your ears are no longer tools, they're liabilities. Phase 5. The run now instinct takes over. You move. Doesn't matter where, a way is enough. Your shoes slam against concrete. Your breath tears out of your lungs, hot and ragged. The air feels thicker now, like it's resisting you, like even the environment is slightly out of sync. Behind you, no, not behind, around you. Teke Teke. The rhythm is no longer distant. It's layered, overlapping, as if the space itself is repeating the sound, compressing it, feeding it back faster than it should travel. You try to map distance. You can't, because the rules are gone. Phase 6. The silence. And then, nothing. No sound, no rhythm, No scraping, just your own breathing, too loud, too desperate. Your pulse hammering in your ears like it's trying to escape your skull. This is the moment people misunderstand. They think silence means safety. It doesn't. Silence means the process has completed its approach phase. Sound was never for you. It was for calibration. Phase 7. Proximity. You feel it before anything else. A shift in air pressure. A drop in temperature. Sharp, immediate, invasive. Like stepping into cold water without warning. The skin on your arms tightens. Your spine locks. There's something behind you. Not close. Not near. Attached to your space. Your body knows before your mind accepts it. Your muscles hesitate. Not from fear, but from overload. Too many signals. Not enough time. You try to turn. You really do. And that's when it ends. Not with a scream. Not with a dramatic reveal. But with the quiet clinical completion of a sequence that started the moment you heard the first tech. That's the hunting logic. No jump scare. No theatrics. Just a perfectly executed approach algorithm disguised as a ghost story. And the worst part? You were involved the entire time. Every decision, every hesitation, every attempt to rationalize was already factored in. So next time you hear something small, something rhythmic, something your brain insists on ignoring, maybe don't or do. It won't change the outcome. It'll just change how early you realize you've already lost. Let's ruin whatever sense of control you still think you have. Because up until now, you've been thinking about Teke Teke like a problem you can solve, a threat you can outsmart, a situation you can handle if you just stay calm, stay alert, maybe run a little faster than average. That mindset? That's exactly why people don't make it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Teke Teke doesn't exist in opposition to your behavior. It exists around it. You live your life in patterns. Late night scrolling, headphones in, walking alone because it's faster, cutting through empty stations, quiet alleys, dim corridors, because you've done it 100 times and nothing ever happened. That's the illusion. Repetition builds confidence. Confidence builds negligence. And negligence is where things like Teke Teke quietly move in. Think about your typical night. You're on your phone, screen glow bleaching your vision, your ears filled with curated sound, music, podcasts, white noise designed to make you feel less alone. But here's the trade-off. You've muted the world, and more importantly, you've muted the warning system your brain depends on. Because Teke Teke doesn't announce itself visually. It doesn't need to appear dramatically in front of you like some low-budget horror villain. It uses something far more reliable, your hearing, or more accurately, your failure to use it. Noise-canceling headphones. Great for flights, terrible for survival. You've essentially opted out of the only early detection system that might give you a few extra seconds. And with something that compresses distance the way Teke Teke does, a few seconds is the difference between maybe and not even close. Then there's the main character problem. You know the one. That subtle belief that if something strange happens, you'll be the exception. The one who reacts correctly. The one who figures it out in time. Let's be real. That's not confidence. That's a narrative you've been fed. Because in actual high-stress situations, people don't become heroes. They stall. They rationalize. They try to understand instead of act. And understanding takes time. Time you do not have. Now combine all of that. Reduced awareness, delayed reaction, overconfidence in decision-making, and drop it into a liminal space. A train platform at night. A hallway that stretches a little too far. A place where sound travels just enough to confuse you. That's not a coincidence. That's an environment that favors the hunter. Here's the part you won't like. There are no reliable tricks to beat Teke Teke, no cheat codes, no guaranteed safe actions. Some stories say you can answer a question correctly. Others suggest avoiding certain locations. But those are retroactive comforts. Stories people tell to convince themselves there was a way out. Because humans hate randomness. We need rules, even fake ones. Reality is simpler and worse. If you hear it clearly, you're already inside the sequence. Survival tactics? Fine. Let's entertain the idea. Stay in well-lit populated areas. Avoid isolated transit zones at night. Keep your awareness high. No audio isolation. React immediately to abnormal rhythmic sounds. All reasonable, all logical, all mostly irrelevant if the encounter has already begun. Because Teke Teke doesn't test your preparation, it tests your timing. And timing, under stress, is where humans consistently fail. So let's quantify it. Not because numbers will save you, but because they make the truth easier to digest. Survival chance, approximately 3%, and that number is being generous. Not because Teke Teke is unstoppable in some dramatic supernatural sense, but because you are predictable. You will hesitate. You will second guess. You will try to confirm what you're hearing instead of acting on it. And in that tiny window, the distance disappears. There's a reason this legend endures. It's not just the image, not just the sound. It's the structure. A clean, efficient sequence that exploits the exact weaknesses built into human perception. You don't lose because it's stronger. You lose because it starts earlier than you think. So here's the final problem. Not a question, not a warning, just something to sit with. The next time you're alone and the world gets just a little too quiet and you hear something small, rhythmic, almost easy to ignore, what's your move? Do you stop and listen? Do you turn around? Do you run? Or do you do what most people do and wait 1 second too long? Because Teke Teke doesn't need you to panic. It doesn't need you to freeze. It doesn't even need you to understand. It just needs you to hear it.